Hello, welcome to Tuesday Live. I am Omini Odan. Days ago, precisely on the 8th of October, President Muhammadu Buhari presented the 2020 budget of about 11 trillion naira to the joint session of the National Assembly. That development has dominated discussions, especially its timeliness and deliverables. Going by the budget presentation, works and housing, power, defense take lion's share, while social investment programs of the government get 30 billion naira, and the presidential amnesty program is given 65 billion naira. President Buhari at the presentation said the 2020 budget is expected to accelerate the pace of the country's economic recovery, promote economic diversification, enhance competitiveness, and ensure social inclusion. He expressed optimism that the country will attain more inclusive growth, GDP growth in creating jobs and tackling poverty. More importantly, for many, is the human angle faced to the budget, especially with the proposed VAT increase from 5% to 7.5%, where pharmaceuticals and some food items like white and brown bread, fish, and others are exempted from the VAT increase. But how best to achieve the administration's priorities of social investment, infrastructure, and fiscal prudence? How well do Nigerians understand that it is no longer business as usual? This and more will be treated on the course of Tuesday Live tonight, but after this background report put together by Benny Adams.
10.33 trillion naira budget proposal for an accelerated economic diversification and improvement in the enabling environment gives hope to government that achieving set targets is possible. Though inflation is expected to remain slightly above single digit in 2020, a component of the 2020 budget proposal is a financial bill containing 5 strategic objectives to include promoting fiscal equity by mitigating instances of regressive taxation, investments in infrastructure and capital markets, to supporting micro and small medium-sized businesses in line with the ease of doing business reforms, and raising revenues for government. Agriculture has always enjoyed increase in budgetary allocation. In the 2020 budget, sectors such as water resources, environment, as well as social investment program are to support agriculture.
You have the Anchor Borrowers Program, you have the NIRSAL, Nigeria Incentive Risk-Based Lending for Agriculture, so you see I have a lot of activities around the agricultural sector. But this particular 83.8 billion is for the capital leg, of agriculture.
The proposed VAT increase captured in the 2020 budget exempts agriculture commodities such as cereals, tubers, meat, and fish.
The VAT Act already exempts pharmaceuticals, educational items, and basic commodities, which exemptions we are expanding under the Finance Bill 2019.
In achieving all this, Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning, Zainab Ahmed says key reforms like the Strategic Revenue Growth Initiative will be used to improve revenue collection and manage expenditure.
The ERGP expires by the year 2020, and so does the Vision 2020. So we are already starting a process for developing a long-term plan. It might be 20 years, but when we set up the process, we will determine the period along with the various stakeholders that will be engaging. From that 20-year business plan, we will be drawing up 5-year detailed implementation plans, and from those implementation plans, we draw the annual budget. So
against this background, a cross-section of Nigerians express optimism that the budget will impact positively on the common man.
There is judicious application of the funds. everybody will be happy. I think the budget is quite an ambitious one. And we hope the resources, the source of our funding will also be improved.
Raising revenue, there must be a change in strategies. Let's use people. Let's talk about production. Let's talk about what are these workers doing for government. How can we use the same workers we have to produce more in order to earn high?
The federal government, on its part, is looking to generate revenue of 8.15 trillion to finance the budget.
...2020 budget prospects and expected gains. Usually when a budget like this is presented, it dominates discussions, and we hope that this will run all through the month from across the board. Well, that sets the tone for Tuesday Live tonight. And as usual, if you're a regular watcher of the program, it's an audience participatory program. At some point, the lines will be open to you as a viewer. And if we are true to you, go straight to the point and make your input, ask questions, and I will address the questions immediately. And if you're doing that, turn down the volume of the television set. Also, at some points, also the tweets will be read out and we'll address them. Well, it's a full house. As much as we are gender sensitive, it's a full house of gentlemen. Starting from my immediate left, Ajuri Ngalale, Senior Special Assistant to the President on Public Affairs. Good to have you on Tuesday Live tonight.
It's always a privilege to be here. Thank you.
Okay. Ayobami Ayolowo, political economist.
It's nice to be here. Thank you.
Okay, and Dr. Oche Olowu, Fellow, Chartered Institute of Bankers, President, Chairman of Council, Chartered Institute of Bankers of Nigeria. Welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
Professor Nazifi Abdullahi Darma, Professor of Development Economics, University of Abuja. Welcome to the program.
Omini, good evening, and Nigerians, good evening.
We set the ball rolling. 2020 budget, prospects and expected gains. And quickly, in summary, the key assumptions of the budget are just within oil benchmark, $57 per barrel, oil production, 2.1 million barrels per day, exchange rate, 305 naira per dollar, GDP growth, 2.93%. The budget size already has been broken down. Capital expenditure, 2.14 trillion naira, recurrent, 4.88 trillion, debt service, 2.45 trillion, statutory transfers, 556.7 billion, and sinking fund, 296 billion. Let me go straight to Professor Darma. Just generally, appreciate the budget. I know the breakdown has been done already. There are a lot of conversations about it. Appreciate it.
Well, if you look at the highlights of the presentations made by the Honorable Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning, I thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for making the government to listen to my preaching for the last 3-4 years. Because she made the point that the government is in the process of starting to develop a long-term national development plan of 20 or 30 years, and that it will be broken down into 5-year implementation plan. I think this is the most important component of the budget highlight, which to a significant extent will go a long way in giving Nigeria a much better sense of coordinated development framework on a sustainable manner. But beyond that, if you look at the macroeconomic variables and the key assumptions, there is an element of over-ambitiousness on the part of the government. But that is right. It is sometimes logical to be over-ambitious, so that even if you are not able to achieve that, at least it's a statement of expectation, and it also gives you a drive. Because if you look at the benchmark of 2.18 million barrels expected production, and you juxtapose it against the quota given to us by OPEC, which is 1.7 something million barrels, and the fact that even the minister admitted that we are not able to achieve our anticipated production target last year, arising from incessant theft of our crude oil, that component appears to be over-ambitious, except perhaps, not to our knowledge, government might have put in place specific measures and strategies to stem the stealing and be able to achieve that target. Secondly, if you look at the oil price benchmark of $57 per barrel, yes, it's slightly over-ambitious, but I think the assumptions were made on the expectation of the anticipated volatility in the oil market arising from the conflict or potential conflict between Saudi Arabia and Iran and the possible fallout associated with that. And well, $305 to $1 exchange rate target, yeah, with the persistent interventions of the Central Bank of Nigeria in the last 2 years, which significantly have stabilized the market, I think this is something achievable. Of course, there are questions around that because the consistent intervention in the market has really depleted our foreign reserve, but many a times, if you weigh the cost and benefits associated with supporting a domestic currency in an economy that is extremely import dependent and the consequential negative effects associated with allowing the exchange rate to go higher, perhaps is a cost that the government should bear in order to provide an element of stability in the domestic market. Okay. Now, if you look at the inflation rate, yes, persistently in the last 2-3 years, we have been able to achieve relative stability in the inflation, so that is achievable. The only area that I have question, which I want us to discuss extensively as a nation, is the persistent increase in our debt and the consequent deployment of significant amount of our resources toward debt servicing. Because in this year, we are budgeting 2.45 trillion to pay debt service. Now, the Debt Management Office will always tell us that we are working within an international benchmark. But I want Nigerians, and I want the government, and I want everybody to understand that the GDP, which is the national wealth of the country, is the wealth equivalent to the value of a house that an individual is living in. What matters in terms of debt sustainability is the amount of revenue that a country is earning, and therefore the most important sustainability benchmark is to look at how much you are earning and how much is the proportionate percentage of that earning that you are devoting to debt service. Okay. And if you look at what we are earning currently, where we are spending over 50% of our earnings toward debt servicing, is not sustainable at all. And as I've said just some few days ago, one of the ministers of the Mr. President went to Lagos and make a statement that those of us that are criticizing the government borrowing plan are making this statement because we are failed economists. Yes, whether we are failed economists, that is his own perception. We are making the statement because we believe in Mr. President. Appointees of Mr. President, whatever they will say about us, we don't care. But we will continue to drive the point. Nigeria as a country need infrastructural development and expansion, but in an economically sustainable manner. Okay. All over the world, debt financing for infrastructure in the context of low earnings that cannot be predictable is an unsustainable economic infrastructure, and we'll continue to talk about it because there are multi-oriented alternatives, particularly public-private partnership, and this country belongs to us. We are citizens of this country and will continue to say the right thing. And I'm sure the government will be able to listen to what we are saying because Nigeria has done everything to some of us and will never keep quiet to see it sink.
Thank you very much. I can see Ngrele itching to respond, but I'll get to him quickly. Let me take on Dr. Olowu. Timelines planning linked to the restoration of the budget cycle from January to December. From your perspective, what's your thought?
Thank you. I think it's a no-brainer because the budget cycle is supposed to be January to...
It was altered before.
Yeah, it was altered, and that's part of our problem. And I want to commend the government for instituting that discipline because I think part of our problem is that our discipline, we just lost it. And it's a welcome development that we're going back to that budget cycle. I believe that, I hope that the National Assembly will keep to the timeline already set for in passing the budget, and let's see how that drive the activities of the economy. Because clearly, I don't know whether they understand the philosophical foundation behind budget, because the life of the citizens is at stake. And so when you begin to play politics with all that, I find it, a little bit worrisome. So I must commend the government for, reinstating, walking the talk.
We're actually expressing fears because I know very well that last week, through the office of the SGF, the president approved and embargoed all foreign trips, ministers, heads of parliament, to enable them meet the deadline. You see our fears?
Yeah,
Do you think that will not make it work?
It will work. At least the executive will want to go defend theirs. But, the legislator, as it were, have, appropriate right on the budget. So how do you do with it? Although their view was that why they have not passed this passing buck is what we saw, that they've not been able to pass this budget on time because the executive have not done the job properly. So we believe that the directive by the president should speed up this, and I think we should, let's hope for keep hope alive and believe that it will happen. Not until it happens. So let's just, I will encourage them that happens.
Ebami, Prof said it's an ambitious budget. But even at that, Mr. President says it will accelerate the pace of the country's economic recovery, promote economic diversification, enhance competitiveness, and ensure social inclusion.
Yeah, I tend to, I agree with him, especially the way he picked the macroeconomic variables. They really appeal to me. I was going to talk about that, but he has actually done it. It will just be an exercise in futility for me to go and beat that again. But what I will just want to add to what he said, maybe a little bit of disagreement, is that while I agree that we shouldn't be looking just at debt to GDP as our benchmark, I think our debt servicing is not that bad. I think the biggest problem for Nigeria is earnings. So we need to be able to earn better. Now, that is now left to the government to look at how we can earn better. And I think maybe some of the thing they can put in place is for us to, you see, I always say this, you cannot recreate the wheel. You can always adapt it to suit you. Right now, we should look at some of the things that Nigeria cannot continue to import everything it needs. We should be able to build an economic base where we can honestly say at least 70-80% of whatever we consume here, we can produce. And the government is in the right direction. I see people getting angry at the border closure, but I have been to a few countries, and I'm going to mention two of those countries. In South Africa, if you go to any of their shops, you hardly find imported goods. Because they want to help their local production. You will hardly, and this is not a joke. I went to Russia, and when I was going, a few friends were jokingly telling me, please get us the Russian vodka. And I was like, I'll try and see if I can do. But something occurred to me when I went to a shop to ask to buy some. I saw something that marveled me. You see, the prices of drinks in Russia, the local ones, you can find this at 6, let me not use ruble because that would be confusing. You could see this at 1,000 naira, it's made in Russia. You see the same kind of drink that is imported, you will see it at 10,000 naira. So I asked the shop attendant, I said, why? He said, because they don't want to kill their local production. So they make it so expensive for you to buy imported goods so that you have to buy the one that is made at home. That way, the production capacity of that country grows better, and it helps their GDP and it helps the earnings. So right now, we are wasting so much money in importation of things that we can actually produce. So we, just to say to what Prof said, our problem is not just debt to GDP ratio, our problem is debt to earnings. So to help our earnings, we have to help local production. Now, let me quickly now go to my own analysis of the budget. I look at it in 4 ways. One of the first one is the budget is purely for me is a pro-people budget, and I will say it this way. Even though VAT was increased, what you will see is that VAT, the federal government, as a president, actually, he didn't just bring the budget, he brought a law to accompany it. I think he called it VAT law, budget law to
finance bill.
The finance bill. Mm-hmm. And that bill helps such that apart from whatever the law has exempted from VAT, they added more to it so that the poor people will not be affected significantly. So in terms of food items, pharmaceutical items, books and stationaries, it is exempted in VAT. So it is purely pro people that even though the budget is high, the VAT has been increased, the budget has made room for it to be pro people, and it's also pro growth. Secondly, that is the overall capital size is smaller, but you'll find out that areas where the majority of the money goes to are the ones that will affect the people in terms of education, infrastructure, and some other areas. They got the largest chunk. So it's pro-growth, and it's also pro-state. VAT, we see the percentage that will go to state. So the state will get more from VAT. That way, even though VAT is increased, state will have more money. One, to embark on developmental project, to also pay salaries. We've had a lot of issues with salaries. Salaries have become like an issue in Nigeria in the last 4, 5, 6 years. So it will help them. And finally, it is also pro-development because the MSMEs have been exempted from VAT. Companies that their turnover is below or not more than 25 million will not be involved in tax. So it is, you can see that this budget has a human face. I've seen a lot of analyses trying to bring the negatives out of everything. For me, I see positives, a lot of them. And these 4 things that I highlighted may not be enough fully, but it shows that the government, even in crafting this budget, have the people at the back of their mind. So I am not too scared of the year. For me, I just, like Prof said, 2 things must come to play here. The federal government will do its part, that is the executive, in terms of ensuring that these timelines are met. And then the legislature, hopefully, will not play politics with the lives of Nigerians. We will not have the issue of we cut the budget so that we'll go and cut it. Budgets that have been made for, let's say, for a construction of a particular road that is critical to our life. Somebody doesn't go and cut it to back a canapé for his people, and they said it's a constituency allowance or whatever they call it. So the budget should be critically looked into to ensure that it achieves the purpose for which it was crafted for. Let's not play any human politics with this, because the lives of Nigerians are dependent on this budget.
I deliberately held down Ngalale so that...
but I have a problem with some assumption.
Okay, just respond before I go to Ngalale.
The assumption...
I've held him down. He has to respond to all
You see, the assumption of 305 is faulty. Because right now, you see that central bank is mostly met the
exchange rate, right?
Exchange rate to 326. So 305 as against 326. That central bank, that assumption is faulty. Yeah, because we need. In fact, I can see that we should be market-oriented in efficiency, because if we really want to do justice to this, we should, believe in market efficiency. Everything, because what it means is there is subsidy in that space. And part of our problem, maybe as we go on, we'll begin to talk about that.
Absolutely.
And then if you look at, that's my fear has been that consistently we have not delivered above 60% of the budget. How are we sure that we can do that? For the past 3 years, we've not. Are we sure we're going to do that? So these are critical things that we should note. Again, even at 2 point, the last assumption on the crude, we didn't meet it. So how are we sure we're going to meet it? Because there are no critical investment in the oil space. I happen to, in my previous life having to be head of oil and gas in a bank, and I know what has happened in terms of the IOCs are not investing. So what you are doing is just you're basically reaping from the previous one. So they will run dry. We've not had any huge finds. What are the investment? And that investment has not happened because the PIB has not been passed. So these are issues, lack of coordinated efforts and all that. So I believe that we should begin to look at how to coordinate this effort, not just throwing banding figures, throwing assumptions, because next year again we said, okay, we didn't meet the oil projection, so we should be realistic. Or at most, I don't know if the PIB should plan, because that was for investment.
Okay. Let me allow Ngelale. More or less, it's more or less a two-way thing. Agreeing, disagreeing, agreeing, disagreeing. So let me hear from. I deliberately held you down.
Thank you very much. First of all, these gentlemen are all very, very intelligent, and I appreciate all of their offerings and submissions. Let me just say that I agree with some of what they've said, and of course I disagree with some of what has been said. I'll start with what I disagree with. What my friend just mentioned about oil and gas investments. I'm surprised a little bit that he said that in view of recent developments in the sector, where you have had, for example, the Egina floating oil drilling platform, which has really opened up the deep offshore space in such a way now we're beginning to see a consistency in the kinds of production that we've been looking for over the years now, ranging between 1.8 and 2 million barrels. That's one thing. On the other hand, we're seeing new investments in oil fields like Bonga and Zaba and others. So I don't really know where the assumption came from that oil and gas were not getting new investments, because empirically, if you research, we certainly are. I think we are now in a space where we are trying to, where I agree with my friends here, is that we have to raise revenue. Certainly, they're correct in saying that the debt service is not a problem. Even with all the pandemonium and all the manufactured panic around the debt issue, it really is not a problem. I'm saying that very, very sincerely, because we need to talk not on emotions and sentiments and not on what people on the street are saying. We need to talk based on what things really are. And where we really are is that we currently have, we've mentioned debt to GDP. We all know that that's one of the lowest in the world at 21%. But that does not tell the story. The real problem we have is the debt to revenue ratio, which is what all of us agree on, which is why we must now raise revenues. Exactly. The question is, how is the federal government planning to do that? And that's what I want to talk about. First of all, a very important development happened today in the Senate, where a bill called the Production Sharing Contract Amendment Bill has now reached an advanced stage. Essentially, the implication of that is there was a law in 1993 that essentially said that for all of our production sharing contracts with the international oil companies, that as soon as the price of oil goes above $20 a barrel, we would now amend the terms of those agreements to ensure that we get a higher share of the PSCs. For several reasons that have to do with obviously illicit transactions between certain public officials and international oil companies, that has not been amended. It was due for amendment in 2004. After it passed, nothing happened in the National Assembly. Due again in 2008, nothing happened. And until now, nothing has happened. And so the oil companies have been milking us dry, to the tune now, with the investigations we put in place in the Ministry of Justice, the Attorney General is now saying that they are now indebted to Nigeria to the tune of $62 billion US. Wow. $62 billion US. That's what we're talking about. And, so right now, with this bill having reached an advanced stage, within 2020 alone, and we're saying it openly so the Nigerians can hold us to account, $1.5 billion US will be added to our revenue generation as a result of the amendment that is taking place right now in the National Assembly to the PSCs. You may ask, why is that the case? currently PSCs have taken over kind of the share of oil production from what used to be a joint venture dominated space. You know, we had these joint ventures, cash calls with the international oil companies. We became indebted to them to the tune of about $6.8 billion. Mr. President, as soon as he came into office, negotiated that down to about $5.1 billion. And systematically, even in view of all the hardships we've been facing as a country, we have paid that down now to just over $1 billion, and we're set to pay it off fully within the next maybe year and 6 months or so with the way that we're currently going. So now there is nothing hanging over our heads. We are no longer compromised, and Mr. President is not a man who any international oil company person, official or businessman can take a briefcase of dollars in the middle of the night to make him change his decision. He will not. He's going to insist that anywhere Nigerians have been defrauded by these companies, that those prices will be paid, and they will be paid in full. So this is what is going on. That is in part of how we're going to increase revenue over the next budget cycle. The second leg is with the border closure. What have we seen? We've seen the rate of imported petroleum PMS products drop based on PPPRA's most recent report. Since the closure, from about 61 million liters per day of PMS that has been quote-unquote consumed, down to 50 million liters of PMS per day being consumed, which means that 11 million, in excess of 11 million liters every single day was being moved across the border, and Nigerians were paying it in the form of under-recovery in the NNPC. So now, that's in oil and gas. Think about, you take that over 30 days, you know how many tens of millions or hundreds of millions of liters we're talking about that has been subsidized. Now, on the other hand, we have seen since the border closure a constant increase, I'm talking to the tune of tens of billions within each of the months in customs. Why? Because of the border closure, now all of these firms that have been illegally smuggling their goods, whether it's technological goods, pharmaceuticals, food items, etc., they're now being forced to come through our ports and go through the legal process and pay their taxes and duties, and now we're seeing a rise in revenue. So you take that over the course of, say, a year, you're going to see a very significant increase in terms of our revenue generation. And that's not even including what we're doing within the FIRS. Obviously, last year we generated the most in our history at 5.3 trillion. We expect to do much better than that in 2020 for a variety of reasons with the innovations we're putting in place. So, look, in all of this is to say that our revenue is going to see a very significant increase, aside from the VAT issue, which on itself in monetary terms is going to bring between 1.1 trillion and 2 trillion naira, 85% going to the states, 15 coming to the federation account. So we are going to have the revenue, and we're going to continue to ensure that that revenue is judiciously applied to renovate and construct new infrastructure that will bring in the industries that will employ our people, which will expand our tax base, which will create the kind of sustainable developing economy that we all seek.
Okay.
Sorry, I need to ask...
just a minute, just a minute. You will come to that. Because we want to follow the issues, they will not proceed. But you ask him. The question I want to take you, I'll do that. The question I want to take you now is the public-private partnership. How best can they tap into the national budget to impact meaningfully on the national economy?
Yeah, thank you. I think that's what we're talking about. I think that is the ideal way to go, because most climes, most geographies, major critical infrastructures have been, financed through that medium. We've been advocating for that in the banking industry. So clearly, but the necessary legal framework has to be put there, because capital will not just come to you. Because, you see, the point that we should understand and appreciate is that capital is in competition with all the geographies. So where it's least, what it will leave. So basically, we need to put laws, governance, that will attract people, because, ensuring that their returns will be adequate for the investors. That's so. For us, I think that's, for me, I think that is a basic thing that we should be doing now, trying to reform, put necessary framework that has inhibited this economy from growing. The economy has a lot of potential, but the managers of the economy should now begin to rethink the policies on how to create jobs. I think that's, for me, I think I won't buy to it. But if you don't mind, let me just quickly...
Okay, let me allow you to exhaust yourself.
Yes, you see, the point is that...
That's why we are here.
The point that you should understand, what led to PSC, we started with joint venture. The government is broke. They don't have money. NNPC is broke. Let's be clear. So they didn't get their own counterpart funding on the JV. So you said, okay, fine, let's do, there are various financing model that, so PSC was one because...
So moving forward?
So moving forward, I agree that those were ripped off. Know that, and we couldn't have been ripped off if we didn't have collaborators on the side of this. So that's But again, when you are pursuing that, the investors, the IOCs, it's you've seen investment moving to Angola, moving to Mozambique, so many other areas. So look, there are cartels, so we need to find a way to dialogue and make sure that while attempting to get this, we don't have some international conspiracy. Okay, you don't have the funding. Go ahead and bring out the crude from the ground. So we have to be a little bit circumspect in what we're doing. That's just what...
Okay, let me go to Professor Dama now. And my angle to you will be on, do you see the common man in Nigeria having public policy opportunities from the budget, talking about the social contract?
Well, before I answer your question, let me use this opportunity to express my sincere appreciation to the National Assembly. I have been one of their leading critics, but honestly, in the last 3-4 months.
So you're also addressing
the synergy with which they work with Mr. President, the accelerated nature with which they pass the production sharing contract law, the cooperation they have been given to Mr. President, the mutual working relationship that culminated in the consultative process towards production of this 2020 budget is unprecedented. So I want to use the opportunity to thank them, but to call on other tiers of government, particularly the states and local government. If we have similar cooperation from the governors, this country will have been fantastic. Now, coming back to your question, poverty is a reality in Nigeria. Whether you twist the statistics or whatever the statistics will say, if you go in every city, if you have a casual observation on the street, either people walking, people in their car, you will see a lot of anger and restlessness. It's an indication that people are poor. Now, the essence of government, the very fundamental essence of government, particularly when you contextualize it in the context of the general directive principles of state policy as contained in the budget, in the Constitution, is to improve the life of the citizens. Now, if you look at specific budgetary provisions, particularly of social services, I think they are people-centered and they will go a long way in facilitating the attainment of Mr. President's objective of lifting 100 million people out of poverty in the next 10 years. But to provide complementation to that, we need to have realistic, open and honest conversation in Nigeria, particularly in terms of costing of credit, which I will hit my friend here. Now, for any economy... Let me land.
Just a second, there's a call, our first caller tonight.
Your first caller, okay.
Let's just give you the privilege to also make his contribution, then you conclude.
Good evening.
Hello, Ibrahim.
Good evening. Yes. My first question is to the SA, to the President, on public policies or public affairs. I would like, my advice to him is that I like the way he always explains things, government policies and all that. and I would like him to be always on the air, particularly on weekly basis, so that he should explain all government activities and policies within the week. That's all for him. And secondly, to the professor, I don't know, what the thing about this budget is about the success of this budget hinge on revenue improvement on our revenue and make sure that we avoid all the leakages. I don't know what is the standard percentage to the tax to the GDP, tax to the debt. What is the percentage, and how are we going to achieve that percentage in respect of our tax or revenue to our debt? And thirdly, if we check, what is our investment on oil? Like, for instance, the countries of Norway, last year they achieved $1 trillion on investment on oil. In Nigeria, what is our current investment on oil? I don't know what is happening there. Then also on the issue of oil, we know our production quota is 1.750 per day. That is OPEC production quota. And now our budget is pinned on 2.18. I don't know, are we violating the OPEC quota or what? So I don't know whether are we going to come into collusion with the OPEC quota? I don't know what is happening there. Then lastly, on the issue of agricultural processing, I don't know what is the program, what is the issue, what the government is doing on the issue of agricultural processing industries. I believe if we have agricultural processing industries, we'll go a long way on achieving revenue issues. Like for instance, in Cote d'Ivoire earned $15 billion on cocoa production, but a company in Switzerland, a chocolate company in Switzerland, earned $240 billion for processing the agri products. So can we have all these kind of things in Nigeria? If we focus on all the things, I believe we'll go a long way. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ibrahim. I think let's take it. I'll allow Prof to conclude on his point. Before you conclude and respond to Ibrahim's query,
okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. I think the other issue that I was taking, which we need to have realistic national conversation about, is if you want to improve an economic landscape, if you want to expand the capacity of the economy to produce, you must put in place measures and strategies to make it easy for people to have access to credit that is affordable. Now, this is a hard nut to crack, and I think we need to have national conversations about that, because if you expand the capacity of the banking system to provide more credit, it will go a long way in expanding the capacity of the economy to produce more if it is complemented with domestic production promotion strategies. So promoting domestic production and then providing access to credit will expand the economy, will also automatically expand the tax base of the economy, and therefore making all the debt that we have incurred to be sustainable. The other caller was talking about what is the ideal proportion of debt services related to revenue. Now, internationally, there is no standard benchmark, but in the context of our own developmental peculiarities, we must have a lower proportional percentage, because for every single naira that we take to pay debt is depriving our capacity to provide social services, considering the fact that significant proportion of our population are living under poverty. So the more you pay for debt, the less you provide for social services. For me, the ideal is a situation whereby we don't spend more than 40% of our earnings in order to pay for debt services. So ideally, but you see, these are issues that we need to have conversations about. And I was more than gladdened when the Honorable Minister of Finance made that statement. You know, for too long I was happy with that statement, and that is why I keep on emphasizing it, that we are now going back to the culture of national development planning. With the framework of national development planning, every single aspect of our developmental challenge and peculiarity will be brought, will be discussed, will be debated, and we will have consensus between the federal government, state, local government, the private sector, so that we have at a point a compendium that defines our direction, which gives us macroeconomic predictability, consistency, and the ability of the economy to attract so much resources because of the clear direction that the country is taking on a long-term basis.
Okay.
I think it's a very good and welcome.
There are a couple of tweets here, and I want Olowu and Ayobami to address them. Let me start with Olowu. The first two. The first one is from Chukwu Emeka Nwosu. Good evening, gentlemen. I've enjoyed the points given by Ngalale from the border closure. It's clear that we have been subsidizing fuel for neighboring countries. I just hope the government wouldn't back down on border closure. Second one still on you, coming from SM Olamide. Good evening, sirs. I am Saka Olamide. I am really impressed with this discussion. Also happy that we are improving in generating revenue, but I'm only scared of our leaders embezzling it. Let us buy our Nigerian made products and increase imported goods. That's that. Then for you, you react to this. Okay, go ahead. Take the.
Okay, fine. Clearly, if I get that question again, clearly.
The second one?
Yeah, the first one.
The first one was just a commendation, but that said, I just hope that the government wouldn't back down on the issue of border closure, which you even raised earlier.
Yeah. Yes and no. Yes, in the sense that it pays us right to, close the borders so that we can check, smuggling. But that is like an interim measure. What is that incentive for the subsidy? That is what the long term is to stop subsidizing petroleum products. Because we have, been saying that you should not subsidize consumption. You should rather subsidize production, which America does in agriculture and so many other crimes. So what we should do, because if you subsidize production, you would not give that opportunity for us to produce more and employ people and then create wealth. So in that case, you do not believe the handouts. Okay, the handout, yes, there, but to some extent. So for me, I'm also, again, we are talking about free trade and you're closing borders. So that's rounds counter to, that. Because that's why you see that the government, they have to negotiate and all that. No, for me, it's clear why we have to close border. I do not have any problem with that because it is obvious that we have been having leakages on the border. We've not policed our border. Our borders are porous. Now that bold action has been taken, we've seen the result and effect. So I do not have a problem. But you begin to read in the papers, the government of Republic of Benin and Nigeria are discussing. I'm afraid if we do not cave in, if we're not going to cave in, fine, no problem. Then the second one he said is
the issue of he talks about the issue of improving on revenue generation.
Yeah, improving on revenue generation
and the fear of it being embezzled.
Yes, yeah, fine. I think let's commend the government for beaming Searchlight on anti-corruption fight. I think it should be more intensified. I'm aware that it's not going to be business as usual. So that's, a step in the right direction. But the revenue, clearly, we will be talking about that. Again, we are not looking at, the basic philosophy around that. Like I think Prof was the one who said, you have to, tax is a form of what the government take for shared prosperity.
Okay, let me just hold it there, please. Yeah. Let's take this call from Modestus. Modestus is calling from Owerri, Imo State. Hello, Modestus. You're on to Tuesday Live.
Hello.
Hello, good evening. You're on to Tuesday Live.
Hello.
Go ahead.
Hello.
We can hear you. Go ahead, Modestus. Look,
Hello.
we have lost that call there. Let's proceed.
Somebody's going to talk to me.
We can't hear him. All right. Now, conclusion, please.
Government tax is the government take for shared prosperity. If you have not created that shared prosperity, where are you going to collect the money? So because you overtax people at a point that they don't have the revenue to pay the tax. So we should, at the long term and medium term, this advice to the government, we must create an enabling environment to create jobs so that with that shared prosperity, you will have your own take. That is how it is done, and that was how it's done in China, and it's there in India, and all this, even in Singapore. So we should not, we should be a little bit. I support, the increase, but we should be able to rejig to make sure that our policies are directed towards creating wealth. Creating wealth.
Okay.
Economic inclusion.
Okay, let me take on Ayo now. Two tweets, one from Awal Abdullahi. The fact that the government tried to make the VAT-friendly poor, as we speak now, the price of some goods have started rising up, to mention like matches, battery. That's one. The second one is from Abdul Gombe. Budget plan was fine, but the federal government should push for total local government autonomy. Masses will feel the impact of every year budget. Thank you. Okay.
Well, before I quickly say something, I want to say something about the border.
Beautiful. That's the beauty of the program.
So the truth is, the government is not closing border. This misinformation should be cleared. The land borders were closed. You can still bring in goods to Nigeria via the right channels, so that you will pay the right duty that should be paid. See, what people don't understand is this: when you smuggle in things, you are not a businessman, you are a criminal. It's economic sabotage. So you cannot say, oh, businessmen are being punished. No, they are not being, criminals are being punished. So if you want to bring in goods to Nigeria, go through the correct channel. I mean, just see the news that we read on Singapore, or where they produce this rice. I think it's Indonesia, where half of their importation was going to Benin Republic. It's against Nigerian businessmen, because the rice producer in Nigeria are also businessmen. A lot of people have invested heavily. I work with Narsal, and I know how much has been invested in production of rice mills. So if you begin to encourage criminals bringing in rice into Nigeria, you are killing the Nigerian businesses, and they will never grow. So borders are not being closed. What has happened is that the land borders that are being used by criminals to illegally bring in goods to Nigeria are now being properly policed, so that if you want to bring in goods and you know these are not contraband, you go through the port, clear it, and pay the right duty, and then you can say you're a businessman, you're not a criminal. So now to answer the issue of the VAT, anybody who is increasing good right now is a thief, is an economic saboteur, because one, even the VAT regime has not even kicked off. So one of the problems we have with Nigeria is Nigerians have a way of making life difficult for their fellow Nigerians. You remember the time when we had this skyrocketing dollar to naira, the person selling groundnut will increase money, will say, oh, that dollar. They ask the person, are you importing your groundnut? See, the problem with Nigeria is that we like to take advantage of ourselves to the detriment of ourselves. Now, what I would expect right now is that we should go on a massive campaign to educate people that, look, any food that is produced that is being produced, pharmaceuticals, and most of the product that the poor Nigerians will naturally use or consume are not being taxed by VAT. Not even just the increment, even zero VAT is being paid on almost everything that the poor or takes. So if you want to pay VAT, instead of eating your chicken and mama put, you can go to Transcorp and go and buy rice and chicken. Then you pay VAT there because you're a big man. But the normal man will go to mama put, eat his rice, and nobody's going to tax you. So anybody who is increasing price right now I beg both to say the person is an economic saboteur, and they should be mentioned that these are wicked people who are taking advantage of even a circumstance that is not happening yet to cheat their fellow Nigerians, because VAT has not even been increased yet. The law has not been passed. So whoever right now is increasing price is not a good person in terms of the context. Now, I can't remember the second question.
The second question, actually, you have addressed it somehow.
But let me know what it is. Maybe there's something I need to add to it.
Okay. It says budget plan was fine, but the federal government should push for total government autonomy.
Now,
I think it's a very
local government autonomy is critical because right now, when I see people say, "Oh, what government has put into education is too small," I laugh. Honestly, education, primary and secondary school, is not in the hand of the federal government. On the constitution, it's not on the executive, it's on the concurrent, so it belongs to the state and the local government. So yes, the local government should be made more autonomous. There should be, but when you see what Prof has been happy about, most people need to understand this. If we have this development plan put in place correctly the way it should be put, then everybody will know what is my own role, what is my own contribution. Because like you said rightly, we cannot be running like a headless chicken in an economy like this. We must have clear and concise plan, clear and concise timeline, and what everybody's input, what is requires input from all the tiers, both federal, state, local, and even the private sector. So if we have this plan put in place, like the Minister of the Honorable Minister of Budget and Planning has said, then likelihood we will have a more synergy between all the tiers of government. So I think it's a good thing, and I agree with this gentleman or lady. So it's a good idea that we'll have this autonomy, but the anti-corruption people must look very well, because so many of the bad things that happen in our system goes on in those areas and nobody looks. Everybody keeps looking at at Abuja, but the truth is your state, your local government affects you more. And we can see some states are already showing that they know what they're doing. I don't know if anybody followed what happened in Kaduna today, but that for me was a massive statement of intent. A state government that has finally come to the understanding that they need to do more of capital than recurrent. Their capex right now is 73.6%. While the recurrent is just 23%. It has never happened in the history of this country, and I doff my hat to the governor of Kaduna State. And I think a lot of other governors need to copy from that man, because we need a state, we need states that are working so that we will have people, Nigerians will feel the impact of governance. Abuja will not touch the life of the man in Nguru. Abuja will not touch the life of the man in Katampe. Abuja will touch the life of only people in Abuja. It is the states, the local government, that will touch the life of every Nigerian, because they are the ones closest to the people and they understand what the people need. Because the need of the man in Zamfara is not the same need of the man in Lagos. But it is the state, the local government, that knows the difference and whatever each state needs. So I think the question is suffices, and I hope those people who are to make this who are to run the country in terms of state, local government, and everything are listening. We shouldn't play politics.
They should be listening
with the lives of our people.
Well, I'll go to the senior special assistant, but let's take this call from Shegun. Shegun is calling in from Lagos. Hello, Shegun.
Hello, I'm still online. Don't worry.
Go ahead, please. We're listening to you.
I'll wait until you put my...
Shegun, go ahead. Shegun, if you can hear us, go ahead, please.
Yeah, good evening. Good evening, sir. Yeah, please, I want to implore Mr. President. That the closure of that border should remain. Hello?
We can hear you. Go ahead, please.
Good evening.
Go ahead.
I want to implore Mr. President that the border closure should remain for life. It should remain for life, because we have been exporting, we have been importing employment and exporting Now, most of our agricultural produce now, we are into agri, and people are going back to farm. The farm chains are there. those who farm, those who prepare it, who will take it to the market, these are chains of business, and it's creating employment in this country. And we are now having all these goods from other countries that we can produce in Nigeria. We are eating foreign goods in Nigeria. Today we have a government who is very interested in Nigerian produce, in Nigerian goods. We should support this particular government so that these poverty people were making noise over on the street, in the house, everywhere, can be a thing of the past. We cannot eat our cake and have it. There are a lot of graduates over there. They are not having anything doing. The manufacturing companies are dying. They are moving to other countries. So now if we can begin to eat what we produce, it will help the manufacturing, it will help everybody in this country. So I am imploring and I'm appealing to the president that border closure should not be open until we get our economy back on track. Because I believe that this country can be better than this. I am so surprised that I see a lot of professors, the way they turn upside down economic synthesis. I don't understand. They should be in the forefront of educating Nigerians that what the government is doing right now, by making sure that we are producing what we are going to eat, it should be in the forefront of, telling the young masses that the government is moving in the right direction. But they want to come on air to be giving us analysis that does not change our lives. So, in a nutshell, I want the government to look at the revenue. Look at the revenue moving on. Moving on. Even this Controller General came out some days ago to tell your world that as soon as they block the border, the revenue generation of Nigeria has increased. So most of these products that pass through our borders are going back to our port, and they are paying their duties. And all these duties, and we're talking of serving our debt, and we're talking of increasing our revenue. These are ways we can do it. And I want to appreciate the other man, like an Afghan there. He has really explained everything, what is really going on. And I want to employ him to come on air intermittently, at least maybe once in a month, to tell the Nigerian people what is going on in the government. Because even the government is not telling the Nigerian people what they are doing. Because when you are not informed, you will be deformed. You will see a lot of media reports contradicting, like the one they tell us about this Buhari's second wife.
Thank you
so the government should always come out to tell Nigerians what they are doing.
Thank you so much.
It is only when they know what they are doing
so
that the masses will support them. If they don't know what they are doing, the masses will be fed with fake news.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Shegun. And before we take the break and allow Ngelale to respond, there's this tweet coming in from Akota John Bright. The border closure should have been long done. It's a good move that would pay at the long run. But taking a peep at the budget of about 9 billion for generator and its maintenance is not fine to me. Why can't the government see to power generation in the country? It implies that Nigeria power sector will not be redeemed. As a Nigerian developer, I had to install solar system in my house for my development. But quickly, Ibrahim, the first caller, hinged on agriculture. And Shegun has hinged on that. And this, can you respond?
There are so many issues. I'm sure that I'll be interrupted by the commercial break, but when we come back, hopefully I can finish. Well, let me just start by saying that my brother Shegun...
Okay, let's take that after the break.
Okay.
The focus once again is the 2020 budget, prospects and expected gains on Tuesday Live tonight. When we return, we continue the conversation. Stay with us.
Our fearless officers and men of the Nigerian military are winning the war against Boko Haram. Today, all occupied territories have been recovered and Boko Haram has been degraded. Our affected brothers and sisters are getting their lives back. However, they are now after you and me. In our mosques, churches, schools, motor parks, markets, entertainment centers, and public gatherings. Be vigilant. Be security conscious. Report suspicious persons, objects, and movements to the police and other security agencies. The security of our nation is a duty for you and me. Nigeria, unite against terrorism.
This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
The struggle for independence had been a long and tough one. Our founding fathers and compatriots sacrificed their comfort and even shed their blood. We cannot at this point in history afford to spirit away their sacrifices for immediate but temporary gains of today. Let us emphasize what unites and not what divides us. Working for the unity of purpose with a stronger vision for a better tomorrow. NTA, growing with the nation.
Nigeria, the only country we can train with remarkable potentials to excel. Let us believe in ourselves and change our attitude for the sake of our country and generations unborn. Let us revive our cultural values, which are our essence as a nation. Let us renew the spirit of patriotism and hope in our dear country. Do not take or give bribe. Be punctual always. No more African time. We can't expect to be global citizens and operate on African time. Join the queue. Insist that people are attended to on a first-come basis, no matter who they are or where they come from.
Nigeria, good people, great nation.
Make you report any crooked person, object or wakajube movement to police and security agent demo.
The security of our nation now work for all of us, plus including me and you.
Nigeria, make we unite against terrorism. The Federal Ministry of Information and Culture bring on this message.
NTA Tuesday Live, a network issue-oriented innovation talk show.
Thanks for staying tuned, and the focus tonight has been 2020 budget prospects and expected gains. We're to have the senior special assistant to the President on Public Affairs respond before we went on break. But before that, a tweet came in, and he has to add that to his response from Olamide. Good evening. We have been eating our lovely rice, but the only sad thing is that some of our rice are full of stones. Please try to educate farmers to please make our rice a better product. Thanks. It's not been easy to eat it. So.
Wow. Yeah. Thank you. Yes, I thank him for that. I'm going to get into that when I get into agriculture. Let me start with my brother Shegun, who referred to me as his half-caste friend. I know it's okay. It's all right. As long as he knows that even with my fair skin, I'm his brother, I will not find him. But let me just say that, you know, the issue of border closure, him saying that you know, he wants it permanent. I understand the sentiment because everybody can see now for the first time just how abused we have been with the issue of the border with the Benin Republic. And we haven't even touched the fact that the Benin Republic, the government has been making hundreds of millions of dollars annually on these illicit imports, which they're now using to flood the Nigerian market with. Now, it's important that we understand that the whole purpose of this is not to make an enemy with, an antagonistic relationship with our neighbor. The idea is to ensure that they understand that we have all the leverage. We have the market, we have the economic size, we have the people, we have everything that has to do with the relational dynamic is in Nigeria's favor. So there's nothing like Nigeria caving to Benin Republic. That shouldn't even arise in the minds of our people. The issue is about negotiating a fair deal that will ensure that all of these illicit activities that have been going on are stopped. once we have that deal in place, of course, the land borders will eventually open up because, again, we're not against free trade. What we're against is illicit smuggling. So that will happen. And when that happens, our people should not believe that we've caved in. No, it means that we've gotten a deal that ensures that our economic interests are protected. Our farmers produce rice, our mill owners, et cetera, across the sectors. That's number one. Number two, the issue of power. I totally receive my friend's comment on that. I have that understanding of the frustration. Obviously, even in my own house, I don't have a housemaid, I don't have a house help, which would surprise some people. But when the light goes out, I have to switch on my generator like everybody else. See, it's not that we know that Nigerians are very skeptical when government talks power, because Nigerians have been told by previous governments that we will do 40,000 megawatts by 2020. Now look at where we are. It has not happened. So there's going to be skepticism. So what we're telling our people is this. We are saying that from 2015 to 2018, the power generation rose from 5,000 megawatts to 7,000. Power transmission from 5,000 megawatts to 8,000. But power distribution, which is very key, was at 3,500 megawatts and continues to be at 3,500 megawatts. And in fact, during the rainy season, it drops down to 2,700 megawatts. And for those who don't understand the sector, if you're producing 1 million megawatts and your distribution is only 2,500, it's only 2,500 that Nigerians will see. So that is why Mr. President said, as a matter of necessity, we must address distribution before we touch any other thing, which is why we have entered into this deal with Siemens, the German engineering giant. Now, the details are this. You may ask, okay, I've heard Nigerians, I've discussed with them on radio around the country. They say to me that, look, we've had this situation of foreign conspirators with Nigerian public officials. They tell us about a good deal, but ultimately the foreign conspirator takes our money and runs away. Let's be very clear about how this deal is being financed. 80% is being financed by the German Export Credit Agency. 20% is being financed by the Nigerian government, counterpart funding. Now, the 80% that is being paid by the German Export Credit Agency is being paid directly to Siemens. That means it doesn't go through any government kind of agreement, whereas before they would give a whole bunch of money to the Ministry of Power, and then maybe the Minister of Power has, the consultants that he wants to put in place and all that. All of that is off the table now. It is going to be dealt with directly between the German authorities and Siemens. And our counterpart funding of 61 billion naira, approximately $200 million, has been put in place under the Presidential Power Initiative. That's what it's officially called. And it's coming from source, from Federation account. Very important for our people to understand. It's coming from Federation account and being paid government to government. That's on the one hand. What does this mean for Nigerians? By 2021, they've already done the full technical audit of all of the distribution infrastructure across all the 11 distribution companies across the country. They know exactly what is needed where we need upgrades, where we need reconstruction, and where we need new construction. On the basis of that audit, they have given us a very clear roadmap of every detail, every piece of equipment that is required, and they have given us the bill of quantities of how much that is going to cost. On the basis of that, that contract is going to be finalized, the financial close, hopefully by December, all right? And then between December and June, the equipment is being produced in Germany, and then by July, latest, the German